Hey, what's up? I'm a diagnosed narcissist, and I wanted to talk about the narcissist and borderline relationship dynamic. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that borderlines and narcissists are naturally very attracted to each other. And yeah, I wanted to, discuss about that. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a licensed professional, obviously, like what I say in every single one of my videos, so keep that in mind as I proceed along with what I'm about to say. But naturally, borderlines and narcissists being attracted to each other, it's fairly obvious why. Because what a narcissist and a borderline struggle with work in compensation towards the trauma that a narcissist and a borderline, you know, have gone through. And I'll explain that even further. If you're a narcissist, kind of like myself, you've most likely had a childhood where you've spent a lot of time, I guess, proving yourself, let's say, and you learn very quickly that you can only rely on yourself, and you naturally develop, I guess, a very avoidant attachment style, dismissive attachment style, I think, is what they call it. Now, the reverse is true for somebody with borderline personality disorder. You grow up learning that you need to be dependent upon other people. The security that you need for yourself is always placed upon other people. So that's kind of the difference, basically. So when a narcissist and a borderline get together, there's this very strong, you know, like magnetic pull, I guess, because borderlines have essentially, from what I understand, have practiced their entire lives gaining the validation and approval of like certain people that they think can, fix them. And I think what very much draws them to the narcissists, are all the traits that we display that they wish, they had. Um, a borderline's insecurity, I guess you can say, is more outward. I mean, don't get me wrong, narcissists were very much like insecure people as well, but we compensate for that with superiority rather than latching on to somebody. And that's why essentially we have the, you know, dismissive or like avoidant sort of like attachment style going on there. And this is what I always like, speculated when you're dealing with somebody that has basically borderline tendencies and whatnot. They're very much drawn to a narcissist's, view of superiority and arrogance. And I think they use us as a way to say, oh, if this superior and narcissistic person is giving me validation, then, oh, there must be something special about me. That's why typically when a lot of people keep talking about, oh, love bombing and whatnot, I think, yes, the borderlines tend to eat it up really well when narcissists are doing it. And why do narcissists tend to, I guess, love bomb borderlines compared to like a lot of people? Well, I think they're the only ones that get it personally. Whereas I think a lot of people, healthy people, regular people, you could just say, see it as some form of like manipulation tactic and, all those like negative connotations that come along with that. What makes a borderline and a narcissist the same is that they fit into the same cluster B category. So there's a lot of shared emptiness and lack of identity going on there. So I think essentially the love bombing that, a narcissist does to a borderline naturally, hooks them and keeps them very attached to the narcissistic person. And the way that the borderline has spent their entire lives trying to, make whoever they're in a relationship with feel good or gain the approval and validation of like certain people that they go through relationships with and whatnot. This is very satisfying to the narcissist's ego because the narcissist doesn't really meet a lot of people that, I guess would like do this sort of thing for them, which is why I think, and I guess I hate admitting it, the borderline is probably the only person on the planet that can make a narcissist come running back, I guess. Well, I don't know if like running back's the way to say it, but whenever there are problems in a relationship, I think we narcissists and borderlines essentially go through this cycle where the borderline might expect more from the narcissist because I guess after all the love bombings like said and done, they need more and more supply. And I think this is what needs to be highlighted because I think everybody always like paints this like one-sided picture where the narcissist is the only one running the show. I mean, we both definitely try, but I think the way that the borderline even gains control over the narcissist is just extremely subtle because they don't have the quote unquote arrogant personality out there. The borderline is willing to, I guess, soothe that narcissistic ego, that fragile narcissistic ego until the narcissist is essentially, back in their grasp, and they basically just repeat this cycle over and over and over again until there are problems, basically. So essentially, borderlines use narcissists to fill the emptiness that they have because a person so well endowed and so, like up here, I think I would say, at least like in their perception, is somebody that's safe to be around. Somebody that's, you know, lets them know that like they're worth it because if they spend all that time being insecure, not knowing, excuse me, not knowing, I guess, who to be with, I think they like being around that person that wants to be in control, quote unquote. Because if you're a narcissist, I think, if I'm just being honest, and I think if a lot of narcissists are also being honest, we do like control in a relationship. And I think a borderline is more than willing to extend that to a narcissist compared to most people because that borderline also has that sense of like emptiness. They like living their lives through other people. And with the narcissists, we, give them this sense of like being who they are because borderlines will often adopt the traits that narcissists have. Well, when I say traits, I don't really mean traits in terms of like pathology, let's say, because obviously these are very like different disorders and they come across in different ways. But I don't know. Let's just say likes and interests and whatnot. They take it on as their own persona, you can say. You can say that a lot of cluster Bs essentially like mirror each other in general. But I mean, that aside, okay. And narcissists enjoy being around borderlines because they give us this like, I guess, delusional sense of control that a lot of us do crave. Whereas a lot of people who might say that like these behaviors are toxic will, run away and not want to deal with us. I think borderlines are, up on our par to want to deal with these, I guess, quote unquote, like controlling behaviors and whatnot. But I think, yes, that is essentially how they gain their control over us. Because on the surface, it looks very much like it's only we narcissists that are, pulling the strings together and whatnot. But oftentimes, when things get overwhelming, a lot of us narcissists do actually want to back away and leave the relationship. But I don't know how to explain it, but I guess if I were to put it in words as to, I guess, maybe why the borderline is perhaps the only person that can make the narcissist, and I hate saying this, like bend over backwards, if you will, is because, I don't know, it's this weird psychological thing, whereas if you always feel like you have control over, somebody, there's no way that like they're the same as just like everybody else. Because if you, as a narcissist, thinking that you run the show, you run the excuse me, you run the relationship, you're on top because narcissists view things very like hierarchically, who's on top and who's at the bottom. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, a lot of borderlines don't mind being the subservient in a relationship. A lot of borderlines don't mind being like that submissive part in a relationship. I guess we have less of a hard time seeing them as pathetic. Although I guess this can sort of like fluctuate because a lot of us, in our like day-to-day lives like look down on a lot of people because we think that, oh, they're, worthless, and that like, oh, we're so much better and whatnot. It's kind of strange because despite the borderline acting, very submissive, very subservient, almost like lowering themselves for somebody, I guess as a narcissist, you almost just get rid of like all that negativity that you might hold for like most people in general, but you welcome the borderline with such like, open arms basically, because they end up being such a good source of like, your ego and stability. And essentially, this is how basically when a narcissist and a borderline are together, they basically try to compensate for each other's like emptiness and like lack of like identity. You as a narcissist have this like sense of control that like you run things, it's predictable, this person that keeps like buttering you up. And when you deal with object constancy, that's all you want to deal with. Somebody telling you over and over again that like you're the best, because it becomes predictable, it feels safe because we don't have whole object relations to, you know I guess when it comes to like our relationships and whatnot. And this is also the thing with borderlines, they don't have whole object relations themselves. So I think as long as they know that they're with a person who gives the illusion in terms of like being secure, they know what they're doing, this and that, then a borderline can always, be hooked on a narcissist, because without that, like, I guess like control in their own lives, someone who is deliberately so focused on control, hierarchies, who's like running the stuff, to it's very, appealing in the eyes of a borderline. And of course you're going to want to be around that, because I guess it almost works as if like a like they say that like a lot of narcissists might only want to associate with like high status people, but I think arguably you can say this about like borderlines as well, because I think that's what they like about like narcissists, like the idealization that like, okay, I have somebody who is just, so firm and so secure that like, oh, they can walk away from me, I must chase them, quote unquote. It's yeah, I don't know what to call it. Like I don't know, pretty intense, I guess. So with a narcissist and a borderline, you basically have two people that are trying to hold together their own sanity. And when they said that Narcissus fell in love with his reflection? Yes, he fell in love with his reflection, not himself, because there was nothing there. A narcissist is empty. A narcissist is no one. And I think in combination with a borderline, such as what I'm saying, a narcissist and a borderline are basically two people trying to hold their own sanity together. I think narcissists struggle to let go of borderlines, despite the fact that we do want to escape, because our natural defenses are to, just look after ourselves instead of worrying about anyone else when things are too difficult. But I think when a borderline, does their thing where they make us feel so good about ourselves, they simulate what we wish we were, essentially. And we do that to ourselves on a daily basis. And now there's somebody else willing to do it for us, willing to, I guess, reflect the things that we wish we were 24/7, like a mirror, like when Narcissus was staring at himself. And in terms of a borderline trying to hold their sanity together, which is why I think, yes, they're really good at it, not just from experience, but yes, literally just trying to like keep themselves together. It's that approval from the narcissist once they get it, that they know that they're worth it, at least in terms of like what they believe. But in actuality, these are just two people that will always be nothing other than hollow.